No, just want to kind of start off with just some thanks and appreciation. Obviously, everything starts with ownership, and we wouldn't even be in position to have a successful training camp without their unwavering support and the resource that they provide, and the players, most importantly. I mean, I respect the hell out of them. I mean, they gave everything. It was a fierce competition, in camp, and they reported ready to go, and they gave us everything they had. They really did the grind, the strain. So hats off to all 90 of them that were here. I thought Dan did a phenomenal job. I would say elite management, elite preparation. With such a young team, it's a balance of getting the work that you need to get in and that's required, plus being smart, plus getting the guys prepared and ready to go for week one. And that's a hard thing to do, and I thought he did an excellent job of it. I thought him and the entire coaching staff, they were excellent. And our personnel staff did a great job, evaluating the entire league through the preseason, and the roster decisions that we had to make. I always say it's a collaborative effort, so they were very much a part of it, along with the coaching staff. But all the preseason work and ending up with one claim, that was huge. So it's just a lot of work that goes into that one name. But I would say, just going back to last year, trying to cut down to 85, probably after the first few days of camp, probably could have told you, yep, got the 5. And then you got to cut down to 80. And it's like, yep, got it. And even I told you guys last year, we cut down to 53 last year. I mean, Dan and I maybe had probably like one or two really discussions, that needed to be made. But, fast forward to this year, just getting down to 85 was difficult. You kind of got to about 3, and then it's like, okay, I'm not sure if I want to quite do this yet. And so it made it hard. And I think all of that dates all the way back to, start of this offseason, and, everything that everybody put in during free agency, our pro personnel department, Mike Disner, and just getting the right guys in, getting the right guys that fit. You go through the drafts. Our college scouting department doing a great job. So you get this boost in talent, and so you combine the boost of talent with a great coaching staff, and here we are. And we had a lot of tough decisions to make. And I even know that right now it's the 53, and there's a lot made about who made the team and who made, but I mean, even the guys we have on practice squad that we were able to get back, I mean, it's not over. Again, it's still a young roster, and those guys that, got some of those last spots, they still got to keep playing, and because we're not going to stop working, and it's going to be an evolving process. But without further ado, I'll take any questions.
How much thought went into that process and just that situation, specifically?
Yeah, so I'd say even going back, when we decided to bring the 2 back, every single decision we make, it goes through a very thorough process, and we want to be as rational and sound in our judgment as possible. So, even with Tim, being that the wins didn't come in the games that he played, but those first games that he ever played in his entire life, we saw some things that encouraged us to want us to keep working with him. And then, bringing back Blau, and he's got previous experience. And so we had the plan in place. We felt good about it. And, they just didn't quite make the jump that we expected them to make. And so you just got to make some tough decisions, and you just got to find the best solution that you can.
These cuts, we saw Dan's speech about the 2 buckets of players, right? The guy that do everything right all the time, and then the guys that maybe have a little bit more talent, but aren't there to the trustworthiness. As the culture's kind of been established through the first year, are you able to take? You feel you're able to take a little bit more risk on the talent versus the, pure effort culture guys?
I would say exactly what Dan said about, the guys that are doing every single thing right, Justin. It's just that, like, we want it to be hard for us. And, when you have those guys that maybe are lacking a little bit of ability and are doing every single thing right, there's a dependability, reliability factor that Dan and I are aligned in and believe in. And we like those kind of guys. But at the end of the day, we still have a coaching staff that has a passion to develop and a great coaching staff that can develop players. So when you have that talent, it does make it extremely hard. So, we'll always preach the guys that are doing everything right, keep doing everything right. But exactly what Dan said, the guys that have the talent, but we won't kind of take more talented guys that aren't as reliable and, guys that are not as talented but are much more reliable. We're not going to say, we'll just go talent, because we're not just collecting talent. We're trying to build the right team and have the right 53.
That's another quarterback question. Just as this was going along, did you all either expect or consider making a move before the cut to 53? In other words, sometime during training camp, sometime during the preseason games, of going out and bringing in somebody to compete?
Yeah, Mike, we looked at, every option. We'll always go down every avenue if there's a way to improve our football team. So, when we kind of saw where it was going, then, every avenue was looked at and exhausted for sure.
For both of you, I just wonder if going into camp or coming out of camp, there was a particular position group that intrigued you, either going in that you wanted to see or coming out that you've been impressed by.
I would say our secondary was one that, going into camp, let's just be honest, there was a lot of question marks back there, whether it was lack of experience, lack of play time, guys that had some ailments, dealing with. And, I'll say even starting off at safety, like it was pretty bare at the end of the season in terms of, not at the end of the season, but starting the off season, hopefully you can sign Tracy back, and what are you going to do on the next? And so we had to kind of collect as much competition as possible, and there were moves made along the way, even doing like a late claim on a Juju Hughes, and I'll let Ray speak more on to Juju, but making a late claim like that, during the postseason, he had to wait. He comes in, and so I don't think a whole lot of noise was made about that. But that move ended up being big for us down the road. So that I'll say the secondary, and then I appreciate the way Jeff Okudah responded, and he was challenged and he earned it, and we were upfront and honest with him, and he didn't cower back down or anything. He took it and he earned it. And so a lot of those questions were answered, and it was much appreciated.
Yeah, first, speak on Juju. Obviously, we had a previous relationship with Juju. The things he liked about Juju was his instincts, his toughness, his ability to make plays on the ball. Juju is a very smart football player, just limited a little bit in some areas, but guy you can count on and dependable. So it was great to get him at that point. But for me, the group that I was interested in watching was the inside linebackers, and I thought that group responded. I thought there was a lot of competition in that group. You brought in some new guys. You really only had a few guys that played last year. You brought in some new guys, and you created competition. And I think that group responded very well.
You've been seeing Brad in this role for a lot of different years, and kind of talk about your role in helping evaluate young talent, and just how do you support him in the day-to-day, just tough decision making of seeing him in this job as he still continues to adjust.
First of all, I gotta say, Justin, great job, man. But for to your question, I know that there was a lot of people think I'm quiet and reserved, but when I'm with Brad, it's a whole different story. Brad see a different side of me. And we spend a lot of time together discussing players, man, and we go back and forth, disagree, agree, disagree, agree, So my job is to help him make sound decisions to help this football team to get better, and that's what I do. I just support him in every area, building this roster, and that's all we think about and all we talk about, really.
You guys have one UDFA, Demetrius Taylor. I'm curious to hear from both of you, Ray and Brad, on the evaluation process with Demetrius. What stood out to you about him at Appalachian State? what sort of development did you see from him in camp that gave you that trust that he was ready for the spot?
You want to hit that?
Yeah, first of all, I have to give Brian Hudspeth and Steve Neal credit. They brought him up, to sign him as a free agent, and Steve does the school, so he talked about the kid, and man, all the kid did was he made plays. He continued to be productive and disruptive in the run game and in the pass game. He made it hard to overlook what he had been doing, regardless of the size. You see the size and you think, is this guy big enough, but he's quick off the ball, and he continued to prove himself. And by the end of camp, you just say, hey, this guy's too good to move on from, So he earned everything he got.
He was one of those names that, when I was down here talking with you guys after the draft, and I didn't know who we signed yet. And so, like, he was one of those names where I went up there and I was like, well, we got him. And not because I invested so much time in him, looking at him. I'm not saying that, but he's one of those guys that sometimes when you're watching tape on other people, and I want to say it was during the 2020 season, actually, where I was looking at somebody either on App State's defense or somebody playing App State, but he just stood out. And I just said, like, who's this number 9 kind of coming off the edge there? It's got twitch and high motor. And so he just kind of stuck out to me, didn't really pay much attention. So then when they started to surface during the process, and was pretty jacked, but Ray hit it. He was he made it hard to ignore, where eventually you got to kind of overlook, the height and undrafted free agent from app. Like, you got to pull that label off and say this guy's on the other side of the line of scrimmage a lot. And so, like Ray said, it was hard to ignore.
Just a quick follow-up, if I may. He came off the edge mostly in college. What led you to believe that he could make this transition to the inside?
Well, he did. Back when I noticed him the year before, I saw him playing defensive end, so I didn't know if that was just a package or that's when he caught my eye. But but this year he did play a lot more inside that I saw. But he was a versatile player.
I wanted to ask about the youth of the roster, obviously being one of the youngest teams in the NFL. Your thoughts on just the youth of the roster, and do you have enough better leadership maybe in those late critical moments when plays need to be made?
Yeah, that's a really good question. With the youth, it kind of goes back to where we were last year. A lot of patience had to be practiced last year, and those guys got a lot of valuable reps, and there are some up moments, there are some down moments, but Dan and I just sticking to our plan and being patient and saying, look, this is what we're doing. And those guys having those reps heading into this year, it was, you could see the difference. It was very, very noticeable. But was talking about our practice squad just recently, and a lot of guys that played for us last year in games, were able to come back to our practice squad. And so there is it's young, but at the same time, there's some plug and play in there as well. So I think that's just a testament to those viable reps those young guys got last year.
Right. You have your 53, you've got your practice squad, you have all that. What happens now? Does you go into like a regular season mode where your focus sharpens on specific areas? How does that work?
Yeah, you're basically in regular season mode now. We'll take we'll take kind of an extended weekend off here, and then when we come back on Monday, we're getting ready for Philly. So, and that's just the normal regular season. It kind of comes in phases where you're in your training camp mode, and just even from an evaluation standpoint, you're looking at the entire league and looking at all the preseason games and seeing who might come available. Where now it's college football, and now it's just like now you start kind of looking at players that might be for this next upcoming draft, and all the while still keeping up with what's going on in the league.
By all accounts, Jared Goff has had a very good preseason training camp and everything else. What has changed in him from a year ago to now? How much has he expanded, gotten more comfortable, whatever?
Yeah, there's a lot that I think can go into that question. It's a great question. I will say I do believe the confidence that he has going into this year has been a big difference. And I've always felt that he was a confident kid. He's always been a very mentally tough kid. But, I think us giving him ownership and, letting him know, like, look, we believe in you. We're supporting you. We're going to put you in the best position to succeed. You're the quarterback. And so us surrounding him with a little bit better supporting cast and giving him that ownership, I think that's helped his confidence, and it showed in this camp.
Quick follow-up. Do you feel like you're taking any bit of a risk with your backup quarterback situation in flux until just now?
Yeah, I mean, it's never totally ideal, just like I was telling Eric, we had a plan in place for the backup quarterback position. It kind of took a detour that was unexpected, but we got to be prepared for that. And we just kind of made it work the best way we can. And, we did what's best for the organization at this time. Not saying that there's a lot of different options you could go. You could trade a bunch of draft capital for a backup quarterback. There's a lot of different options you can go, but we did the best thing for the Detroit Lions, and so that's the option to go. So, is there a little bit of, risk, and is it foolproof? And absolutely no. Well, I have too much respect for the unknown to really, not say that there's a little bit of that, but I think we got the plan in place where, Nate will get caught up to speed, and we'll be in good shape.
You evaluated, but this is the second straight year where you've had a second-round pick miss a significant portion of training camp.
Yep.
I was wondering, as you maybe reflect back, like, is there anything you missed in the medical part of the evaluation process, or health concerns? Like, at that time, is it worth a risk, a high upside guy in the second round to battle some of those or deal with some of those health issues that they may have?
I think everything is, especially when it comes to medical, it's always case by case, Dave. And you going back with Levi, he was dealing with something that we were aware of and that we knew about. And so, he actually was able to do more than what we thought he was going to be able to do last year. And so, unfortunately, he's had to still deal with it, but, you don't have that crystal ball quite yet. And then with Josh, it was something that we were aware of, that we knew that he had to, deal with, and we have a timeline in place, and we don't have any problem with it. So it's not, we're not kicking ourselves. We're not saying, oh, we overlooked this or that. It's just things that we were prepared for.
What Woj was asking with Goff, one of your big decisions this offseason was offensive coordinator. You went with Ben Johnson, which I think probably was the way it was tracking all along. But in terms of collaboration, he's taken what you guys are doing in the front office and it seems like carried that over into building his playbook and his scheme from the Eagles' Nest view. What have you liked about the way Ben's kind of brought the roster together in formulating that offense and how it's coming along?
Yeah, there's so many positives I can start with Ben, but I would say, even the first, when I first got here and he was coaching tight ends and, hearing his command in that room and how he related to the players. And then you start getting into our collaborative meetings about, personnel and with the draft and free agency and, him really having an eye for talent and really he really knows how to evaluate. And so with all that, and then when we made the switch, about midway last year, and, Dan can't rave about him enough. And so when he got his opportunity, I was all in. I was jacked for him. He's been everything. He's been everything that I would have expected, and I think it's a great marriage between him and Goff, and I think you guys can see the results so far that he's had.
You were obviously very excited, Ray. You can comment on this too. Draft day when you got Aiden, just now having a chance to work with him over the last month and see him on the field and behind closed doors, how he works. Just your impressions of him and how excited you are about his progress going into the regular season.
Yeah, well, with Aiden, we pretty much knew that he was a high floor player. But that also comes as a question mark when it comes to draft sometimes, because it's like, oh, well, what's his upside? And what, is it, but, there was a lot of things that we knew that he could get better at. And so him having the immediate impact that he's had so far, again, he hadn't played a regular season NFL game yet, but since he stepped out there on the grass, he made it known pretty quickly that, he was about business. And, there's some things that he's shown that I think some people didn't even know that he had. I'll let Ray speak more to that.
I can't stop smiling. I love the kid. The kid's relentless, man. Effort, and much better athlete than you thought he was in the draft process, man. It's the things he can do, rushing the passer, inside, off the edge, using his hands. He's very creative as a rusher. I'll just say this: we got the right one.
Absolutely.
Along those lines, one of the places that it felt like you had to get better coming out of last year was getting after the quarterback. Are you confident going into this year, the group that you put together is going to be more disruptive?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, with Aiden, when you draft rookie, obviously you pick a guy 2 overall, you expect him to start year 1, but you don't know when it's really gonna turn on. I mean, it's guys that, when Ray and I were with the Rams, it was drafted Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald wasn't the week 1 starter, as a rookie. So you don't know when it's going to happen. Probably should have been, but whatever. But but with Aiden, it was so quick. But the step Charles Harris took, him coming in last year, and kind of having a revival in his career, and I'll say, in the right environment and everything that's been around Charles, he's even taken another step. So it's, you go out the grass and you look at him, you're like, well, he even looks even more explosive than he was last year. So get that, and then you tack that on with, when Josh Pascal comes back and, he can provide some rust, Aquara, he'll be able to apply rush. So, there's a lot of intrigue about our pass rush.
Brad, can you reflect on the place women have had in the league in terms of the front office and on the field from when you started and now what you see across the league?
Light years. I've been in this thing, it's year 20 for me, and you'd always think, well, when are women going to get into scouting and coaching, and that's not even a question now. Now it's it's almost normal now. You go to school visits, on a fall, and there's a female presence in scouting, there's female presence in coaching, there's you get to sports science, athletic performance. I remember when I first got hired, I was very, very encouraged and intrigued to having a co-ed player engagement department. And that was from my days in scouting, is that, I'm getting all this information about these players, and often the women on staff at these colleges had the best information, and they knew the players the best. And so there's like, okay, there's something going on here that, we can't overlook it. So I love it, but it's night and day from when I first started.
The cat is out of the bag a little bit about your guys' enthusiasm for Malcolm Rodriguez. I'm curious, at what point he proved to you or showed you that there was something there that maybe you guys found another day 3 student?
He's had a really good camp. He's had a really good camp, productive camp. The guy's played fast, he's played physical. But, the guy's still a rookie, man. He's still learning, still developing. We love what we see in him. Watching him on tape in college, the first thing that jumps out to you is how fast he plays the game. And then the first thought is, okay, we got us a full-core special teams player, when we get this guy, But he's proven to be a little more than that, But he's still a rookie, and he has a ways to go, and he has to develop. But we've been very pleased with what we saw from him.
Yeah, the four-core stuff that Ray just mentioned, that would get you active on game day, and he was a bona fide four-core special teams candidate throughout the draft process. So right there, it's like, okay, he's going to be playing. But how quickly is going to be the first, second, third down stuff going to translate playing linebacker. And, Ray mentioned just his processing skills, being a quarterback in high school. And, it's just he's got a level of keen diagnose that has translated. But, again, you just don't know how quickly it's going to come, but it's come quick. And but can't say enough that he is a rookie. He hadn't played a NFL game yet, so let's just see where it goes.
I wanted to ask you about Jameson Williams. Through his rehabilitation process, has it become a little bit clearer when he potentially could debut, and how have you felt he's progressed through his first training camp? What he's been through?
Yeah. He is on track. Again, I'm not going to put out a hard date, but I will say the weeks and weeks that he's strung together with his rehab, and he's so gifted from a genetic standpoint. Once he keeps that consistency going, it actually could accelerate that return that we're thinking. You got to be a little bit conservative and on the safer side when it comes to forecasting those returns of play. But hopefully he stays on track, and hopefully it's sooner than later. But we're going to continue to be smart with him. We've always said that from day one. I know he's chomping out the bit. I mean, he'll put on a helmet right now and go out there, and he would jog a slant route if he could. But but we got to be smart because we didn't make that move for him just for year one. That's just a long-term investment.
What do you envision best case scenario for his role? Because he hasn't practiced with Jared yet, and he will have missed whatever it ends up being, half the season or whatever. What's best case scenario in terms of how much he can contribute?
Yeah, that's probably more of a Dan question in terms of how we'll implement him early on. I will say just because of his skill set, he'll have a lot of versatility for us. So if he's not a full-time wide receiver, does he play special teams? Well, he's got some damn good gunner tape out there in the SEC. He's got some good return tape out there in the SEC. So we'll have some options.
This is a contract year for a couple key guys on your team. How do you feel about negotiating in season? Is that something you do? Do table talks once the season starts? We have a precedence in place that we do, but we'll just keep those discussions in-house for right now.
Rookie, James Mitchell, we've only gotten a little bit of him during camp, but Brad said he was a guy he brought to his attention during the pre-draft process. So what was it you liked about James, and I guess what do you think maybe his ceiling can be as an NFL player?
I think his upside is tremendous. And what stood out about him is the route running and the ability to catch the ball in college. And he was a much better blocker than you would think in college. A lot of college guys are not great blockers, but he was pretty good. And before the injury, he was playing really well, So the upside is what stood out to me, the ability to catch the ball and run after the catch also.
Ray, feel free to answer this as well. When you look at what this squad is capable of going into the season, what gives you lofty expectations for them, and what makes you the most excited about this year with them?
When you say expectations, we just want to make sure that we're aligned in terms of what the mentality is going to be, and just make sure that I think that we kind of laid the foundation that we're going to compete and play really, really hard regardless. But now our players have to be smarter now, and so I think that growth of those young guys taking that year two leap, they're being sharper mentally. So that's the leap that we expect them to take, and that's what gets us excited. But not just competing, but just being smarter, but expecting to win. Now you don't go into the game saying, oh, well, we're the underdog, and no, you go in the game saying, no, we're going to win this game. And I think that's the mindset that you got to have. And I think Dan's did a good job making sure that message come across.
Everyone does see, I think that the roster is better, that this team looks better. Are you a playoff contender this year? I mean, do you feel like you have the talent to compete for a playoff spot?
We'll just take it 1 week at a time. Again, if we have the right mentality and we control what we can control, then, we'll just see what the results are going to be. But we're not going to guess a a record. We're going to be this win team or that win team. You know, we're just going to control what we control. And, you know, with that same mentality, we stay aligned and we're competitive every week, you know, but we're very optimistic.
Something you can control. The Hard Knocks clips, Dan Campbell says on the field, I think we've got a defense. What have you found on your defense that makes him say that and maybe makes you say that?
Well, we put a lot of investment into the defense this past offseason and in the draft. And, you know, there are some guys that was with us last year, you know, that are, you know, gonna aid that. Whether it be some young guys like Derek Barnes, you know, that's gonna take a next step, you know. So it's gonna, you know, I think that it's all coming together. We have an extraordinarily talented defensive coordinator in Aaron Glenn, and we are very, very fortunate to be in a position to have him leading our defense. And so made some, you know, not wholesale changes, but a tweak here and there in our scheme. But what I love about our coaching staff is everything is done for the benefit of the players. And so that's why those tweaks were made. And but yeah, I think the pass rush, like we've talked about in the past, and then the secondary, you know, I think we've seen a lot of growth there. And Ray mentioned the inside linebacker room, you know. What the intriguing piece in that is that majority of those guys are really good special teams players. And so usually that's often the separator of like, well, we got a lot of competition linebacker room. We can only keep 5 or we're going to keep 6 or, you know what I mean? But it makes it even harder because all those guys are really good, you know, special teams players. So I think at all levels we improved. And I don't know, Ray.
I agree with a lot you said. The one thing intriguing to me is AG. Like Brad said, he's very talented. And when you got an aggressive guy and then you got extremely athletic guys and some guys who I think are violent football players, you know, that he can use, that he has the ability to use those tools, I think is going to be a recipe for success. So I'm excited about our defense and see how we go this year.
Brad, you said that you can only control what you can control, but something you can't control is the extra attention that Hard Knocks has brought, all the hype, all that stuff. How do you think that this team is going to respond to the maybe little to a lot added pressure expectation of this team getting better and maybe hopefully making the playoffs?
Yeah, Carlos, I was just having a conversation about, you know, it was cool that people were able to see and get a peek inside of our culture and what we're about. You know, we put in a lot of work laying that foundation down and getting that culture right last year. And, you know, even in the free agency process, you know, players are starting to hear about it, but now the world can see it. And we didn't do anything special for cameras or anything. It's just this is what we are every single day. You know, it's very normal. But at the end of the day, if we go out there and win 3 games again, then it's all for naught. So, like, we can have as much buzz and all this stuff as you want. And I really appreciate that, you know, the fans, this fan base is so passionate. They deserve to have hope and belief, but we got to hold up our end of the bargain. So we can have all this buzz and hype and all that, but we don't go out there and equate it to wins, then it really doesn't matter. So then next season, we're sitting down here right now at this time of the year, we'll be saying, oh, it's always buzz, but Lions just let us down. Like, no, that's not what we're trying to be. So we understand that, you know, this thing's got to equate to wins.
If you don't mind, just going back to Malcolm Rodriguez, with respect that he's got to prove it in the regular season, I'm just curious, we talk about the evaluation process and evolving that. When a guy like that in the 6th round comes out and, you know, wildly exceeds early expectations, how does your own evaluation process change for draft picks? And do you learn something from this that you can apply to the future going forward?
Yeah, it doesn't really change it. I will say that when you look at the round that he was taken, and you can always look at, you know, past success at certain positions that you may be able to hit on in the later rounds. I think that's been evident. I was just talking with Ray about, you know, when we were with the Rams, drafted Jordan Fuller in the 6th round, but had a pretty good idea that, you know, he's a high floor player that's going to end up being a starter. And so, but it's certain positions that you can kind of look at and assess that, you may be able to find gold in the later rounds. And, there's inside linebackers. It's a good volume of them throughout the draft. But it's still got to be the right guy. I mean, there's inside linebackers that had better physical traits than Malcolm Rodriguez, later on, but we decided to go the route that we went. And so, not saying that you're going to hit like that all the time, but we'll just stick to our same process.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks.
Thank you.